There it is. Good morning. Good morning and welcome again to the Unitarian Church of Staten Island, December 13th service. Thank you, Carolyn Clark, for your beautiful prelude. Our service today is on the divided brain and religion, and we'll have a guest speaker, Chaplain George Finger. My name is Sarah Dolinar, and along with Sally Jones, I'll be your co-host for this service. Let me say, as a member of the Unitarian Church of Staten Island, that we are grateful for your participation and your presence in this service. I will begin with these opening words, a reading entitled "To Learn More About Being Human" by Erika Hewitt. Welcome to this morning, this day, and this opportunity to be together in community, which is a time of joy, comfort, and sometimes challenges. This Unitarian Universalist congregation is a place where we come to learn more about being human. We're not here because we've figured out life's questions or because we think we've got it right. We come here to learn more about being in relationship together, how to listen, how to forgive, how to be vulnerable, and how to create trust and compassion in one another. Let us move into worship, willing to be authentic with each other, honest with ourselves, and opening to connection in all its forms. I will now light the chalice. This is our regular chalice lighting, so join me if you care to, assuming I can get this lit. Here we go. In the search for truth and the spirit of love, we unite for worship and fellowship. I will now light a candle, and hold on a second while I make this work. I have a number of candles to light. I will now light a candle and hope you will join me wherever you are in saying our new chalice lighting practice started in June. We say emphatically that Black Lives Matter, and we share a moment of silence to light these candles for some of those recently affected by police brutality in this country, understanding that there are many, too many to name. So let me try to make this happen. I'm having technical difficulties, but I will do them one at a time. We light a candle for the life of Rodney Applewhite. We light a candle for the life of Angelo Crooms. Finally, we light a candle for the life of Sincere Pierce. And one more. We light a candle for the life of Casey Goodson Jr. Carolyn will now present the opening hymn, which is "What a Piece of Work We Are."
What a piece of work are we, how marvelously wrought, the quick contrivance of the hand, the wonders wonder of thy thought, the wonder of thy thought. I need to look for miracles outside of nature's law. Humanity we wonder at with every breath we draw, with every breath we draw. But give us room to move and grow, but give thy spirit play, and we can make a world of light out of the common clay, out of the common clay.
Today's reading is a poem by Emily Dickinson called, well, actually, it's just numbered, but it's come to be known as "The Brain is Wider Than the Sky." And the version I'm looking at, where there might normally be commas in the poem, there are dashes. And so even though there's only 15 or so lines in the poem, there are maybe 30 dashes, which is very modern for a poet of the 1800s. And I think what she's saying in those dashes is that, you know, that's the space for consciousness to be considered, a slice of consciousness, a slice of recognizing that the poet is speaking to a reader, that the reader is reading a poem, and that the brain is working all the time. So when I pause, know that this is an Emily Dickinson dash. The brain is wider than the sky. For put them side by side, the one the other will include. The brain is deeper than the sea. For hold them blue to blue, the one the other will absorb. As sponges buckets do. The brain is just the weight of God. For lift them pound for pound, and they will differ, if they do, as syllable from sound. I'm now going to take a moment to introduce a speaker who I've known for a number of years now, and some of you may know. Chaplain Dr. George Finger, a former maritime chaplain, seminary mentor, and spiritual counsel, will speak about the book, The Master and His Emissary, The Divided Brain, and the Making and Undoing of the Western World by Ian McGilchrist, with particular attention to the role of religion. Dr. Finger was originally a naval nuclear engineer who eventually became the director of the Family Forum of Staten Island. He taught extension classes for Sewanee Seminary in New York and online, and was the regular preacher for the Princess Bay Reformed Church until it closed due to COVID temporarily in the spring. He has lived on Staten Island intermittently over 60 years and attended the Staten Island Church, Staten Island Unitarian Church, I should say, with his family in the early 60s. Please, everyone, welcome George Finger.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to thank you all for inviting me into your homes this morning. It's great to be here with all of you. And I particularly want to thank Sarah for inviting me to speak. Sarah and I collaborated on community building work when I was in Port Richmond for Project Hospitality. And I reconnected with this church at that time. And you know, when I recently told Sarah that I was totally passionate about this book that I had read, The Master and His Emissary, she immediately invited me to come and share my passion with you. And so here I am this morning. And the book is about the divided brain. And this has been a subject of great interest to many people. My wife has been fascinated with this subject for decades, so it probably isn't new to anyone. But at the very least, I can guarantee that McGilchrist brings us thoroughly up to date on the conclusions of current research, and he thoroughly debunks the misconceptions and oversimplifications that are still current in the popular imagination. The author started off as a lecturer and fellow in English poetry at Oxford, but eventually he moved on, as people do, to become a psychiatrist in London. And then finally, he moved to Johns Hopkins. Maybe I shouldn't say finally, but he did move to Johns Hopkins in Baltimore in order to do neuroscience research on the divided brain. And he claims to have synthesized and analyzed the ramifications of over 5,000 different research projects, taking 20 years to write this book. And ultimately, McGilchrist draws very dramatic conclusions from his work. And he sounds a loud alarm concerning the implications of his work for our future. Well, I would say that, the subject of the divided self, the divided psychological self, has fascinated most thinking people for thousands of years, including St. Paul, Carl Jung, and countless others. And I'm sure that all of us could talk about that subject, the divided inner self, at great length. But the divided brain did not start to really grab our attention in the same way until we finally discovered the means to bring the brain itself into the conversation. Starting with the split brain research of Roger Sperry in the 1950s and 60s, for which he received the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 1981, our ability to understand our anatomically divided inner psychological nature has been growing steadily. And I should say before going further, that I am not an expert in this field. I'm a layman. My studies in high school and college were all STEM courses. However, my great passion since then turned out to be religion. So on the addendum to my talk this morning, the implications for religion, I feel I can speak with more confidence. So without further ado, let's talk about the divided brain. And I would like to open my talk, as McGilchrist opens his book, with the following quote from Thoreau. "It is not so much what you see." Let me correct that. It is not so much what you look at. There we go. It is not so much what you look at as what you see. It is not so much what you look at as what you see. And remember, the work of Sperry was based on working with people whose corpus callosum, the interconnective tissue between the two sides of the brain, had been severed as a treatment for epilepsy. And the other fortuitous reality that enabled and empowered this research was based on the fact that the two hemispheres each physically control half of the human body, as you know. So by presenting information to only one eye, only one half of the brain would be aware of the information presented. And since the research subject's two halves were split off from each other, a researcher could interrogate and experiment with each half of the subject's brain independent from the other half, which is truly remarkable experimental science. And so needless to say, each half of the brain was completely unaware of what was going on with its counterpart being investigated. Well, this research went on for decades, and the rather stunning upshot of all this research over the next 50 years, we might say, was that the two halves of our brain turn out to be not so different in what they do as in how they do it. Not so different in what they do as in how they do it. Each half of the brain could virtually function as a separate person. The two sides of ourselves, however, had two different personalities, if you will. They inhabited two different worlds because of their two different perspectives on the world. Getting to know the two halves of our biological mind is getting to know two different persons, two different sides of ourselves. Getting to know the two sides of your brain is analogous, I would say, to getting to know a married couple who've lived together for many years and function as one, but are still two separate people. And to understand the difference between these two, McGilchrist begins by paying attention to what they pay attention to. What do the two sides characteristically pay attention to? And he uses an analogy of a bird in your yard, looking for seed. Its left hemisphere is focused on finding a seed and what it will do with it when it finds it. It is instrumental and intent on getting what it wants. Meanwhile, at the same time, the right hemisphere is focused on the whole environment around the bird, open to whatever new thing may appear as either a threat or an attraction, vigilant and alert to the new, aware of the entirety of the situation. And this encapsulates the essence of the difference between the two birds or hemispheres, or two selves, as it were. Both are involved in two totally different worlds. The left is focused on something it knows and does not want any distractions to get in its way. The right, however, is open to the possible reality of discovering everything or anything around it. And this difference of attention reflects a totally different orientation to the world. The left hemisphere is focused on getting what it wants. It makes maps and representations of reality using words and numbers or whatever. And it uses these maps and symbols to exert power over its environment. It's geared for success. Its fundamental drive, according to McGilchrist, is for control. The left brain uses continuing, the left brain uses denotive language and abstraction to achieve control and power. It takes reality out of context and manipulates it in general categories. It works with fixed, isolated, static, and lifeless entities and mechanical systems that it maneuvers to achieve control, power, and success in life. It operates in closed systems of its own creation that yield clarity, certainty, perfection, and complete satisfaction. It provides answers to whatever questions are posed, even if it doesn't know the answer. I sort of think of the left hemisphere, as I've gotten to know it through McGilchrist, as the ultimate, supremely overconfident, artificial intelligence word processor and number cruncher and Google app available for any and every problem that life may pose. And this turns out to be the way the left hemisphere sees itself. It will actually make up answers and deny it is wrong in experimental situations. But at its best, the left brain is our resident problem solver. By contrast, our right hemisphere seems to be unconcerned with being correct or even solving problems. It specializes in what can never be fully understood or known, with the context of situations, with reading the expressions of the human face and body language, with appropriating a broad net of meaning implicit in a work of poetry or art, with embodied individuals, with the living rather than the mechanical, with changing, evolving, interconnected, and incarnate life, received in whole rather than in part. At its best, the right brain lives our life engaging with reality as it finds it, and its fundamental drive, according to McGilchrist, is care. Care. Well, okay, as I said earlier, the primary difference between our right and hemispheres and left has not so much to do with what they do as with how they do it, how they influence our lives. Unlike earlier popular misconceptions, in fact, most of our major life functions are performed with both hemispheres working in concert with each other. For example, McGilchrist asserts in his introduction that our four great pathways to truth are science, reason, intuition, and imagination. And these are not belonging to the left or the right, as is popularly supposed. In fact, each of these is a blend of elements contributed by either hemisphere, not the special provenance of either one or the other. The specific elements that McGilchrist cites, for example, that have emerged from empirical research that are unique contributions of the right hemisphere include such diverse faculties as realism, the appreciation of uniqueness, music, and time, a sense of humor, the capacity for reading body language, sustaining attention, and the fight or flight mode. On the other hand, such unique elements of the left brain include unreasonable optimism, manipulation, disembodiment, literalism, and preoccupations with detail, theory, and body parts. And these are just a few examples. But McGilchrist is not content to simply describe the personalities of these two persons, these two halves of ourself living within us. This is more than a book of popularized science. This is a book of polemic debate. He believes that the proper relationship between the two sides of ourself has broken down. Furthermore, because the right brain is the side of ourself in immediate touch with lived reality, McGilchrist asserts the proper relationship between the two is the subordination of the left brain to the right. And this is ironic, since because for much of Western history, the right brain was considered the minor, subordinate, even an appendage of the left. But McGilchrist turns all of this upside down, or left to right, you might say, and sees the left as the proper servant or emissary of the right. The assigned role of the left brain should be, he believes, to receive the raw data of life from the right, process it with all of its manipulative skills, and then hand it back to the right brain for implementation and realization in the real world. However, tragically, according to McGilchrist, for several compelling reasons, including the seductiveness of the acquisitive nature of life on the left-hand side, and the control of the argument by the greater linguistic skills of the left brain gradually gains ascendancy over time, particularly when a culture or civilization, or perhaps an individual, goes into decline. The left rebels and becomes the master, no longer the emissary, and takes over the dominant role in our lives or in our culture. McGilchrist says this happened repeatedly in the history of our civilization and of our country, for example, since the Industrial Revolution, and especially in the last 50 years. The entire second half of this book is dedicated to retelling the cultural and intellectual history of the West from ancient Greece to today. And it is a fascinating account, and I recommend it to you, and I leave it to you for your pleasure when you find the time yourself to read the book. Obviously, I don't have time here. Ultimately, McGilchrist believes we may be heading for a breakdown of our civilization, stemming from our loss of meaningful access to the fundamental experience of our life, which is our birthright. He argues that we must not allow ourselves to be seduced. And here I will quote, we must not allow ourselves to be seduced, quote, by the left hemisphere's vision of a mechanistic world, an atomistic society, a world in which competition is more important than collaboration, a world in which nature is a heap of resources there for our exploitation, in which only humans count, and yet humans are only machines, and not even very good ones, a world curiously stripped of color, depth, and value, a world that is just a sterile fantasy, the product of a lack of imagination, which makes it easier for us to manipulate, but which we no longer understand. But it is a fantasy that displaces and renders inaccessible the vibrant, living, profoundly creative world that it was our fortune to inherit until we squandered our inheritance. Time is running out. Well, okay, time is running out for me too. So I want to quickly address the subtopic here. What are the implications of what McGilchrist is saying for religion? Well, I think that the implications have been bad. The impact of left brain reductionism on liberal Protestantism has been devastating. The impact of the left brain tyranny of biblical fundamentalism has been the bane of evangelicalism. But what can we do now if we want to learn from McGilchrist? Well, I would suggest, just to open up the conversation, that we strengthen the right brain functions in our common life. McGilchrist says the two great pillars of right brain life are art and religion. And at other points, he cites other natural venues for the right brain as nature, body, narrative, living culture, caring community. So simply by practicing our religion, we are defending the domain of the right brain. But how might we defend our religion from the incursions, the creeping subversion of left brain dominance? Well, first of all, recognize the reductive, competitive, cynical, seductive appeals of the left brain when it attacks what we are doing in the authentic practice of religion. McGilchrist has a lot to say about music as the natural language of the right brain. So let's get everybody involved in making music without so much left brain concern about who is good and who is not. Have drum circles, teach dance and movement, sing songs individually and together. Singing is the natural language of worship. Emphasize transcendence. Transcendence is the opposite of reductionism. Be open to it. The right brain experience of awe, wonder, and transcendence are the origin of religion. Emphasize poetry over prose. In terms of body, teach and practice mindfulness. Practice cooking with and for each other. For nature, go on walks in the Greenbelt, garden, kayak around Staten Island. For narrative, be sure everyone gets to tell their story. Learn great stories, tell stories, practice storytelling. Pay attention to dreams, interpret them, let them influence your life. Practice being an intentional, caring community. Care for each other. Celebrate life as it is. Receive and appreciate what is given. Take care of what we have. Use the left brain. Don't let it use us. Be a refuge from the tyranny of the left brain. Do the work that truly needs to be done, but keep it in the domain of the true master, the giver and caretaker of life. And finally, remember, it is not so much what you look at as what you see. Amen.
Thank you so much, Chaplain Finger.
Did you time it?
I did not, but I think you
I
ended
told
on.
Sarah I'd get it in under 15 minutes, so I don't know. I think it was close.
It was great. And everyone who's watching, I hope you know that you can discuss what Chaplain Finger has said during, after the service, and that we will have a time after the offertory song for Sally Jones to come on and share what you've written in the chat, and for other people to come on and share their joys and sorrows if they'd like to. But questions for Chaplain Finger will be held until the end of the service. So without further ado, I will go into the offertory intro. And now it's time for our offertory. We know that it is the gift of all of us that helps support our ability to maintain the work of the church building, and to thrive and gather online in our own unique ways. We encourage you to give what you can. You can mail a check to our church office, or you can donate online. Sally will post in the chat the links to donate to our charity giving page. Please give as generously as you can. Our offering will now be greatly received.
Far beyond the grasp of hands, our light to meet the eye, as the reaches of the mind. There find the key to nature's harmony, in an architecture so entwined. Like the birds whose patterns grace the sky, and carry all who join in love expanding. The message of peace will rise in light, taking the weight of the world upon its wings. In the oneness of everything, peace is in the dance of trees, who fit before the first breath of wind is yet perceived. Trust in the song, becoming one with the dance, and no mysteries can be believed. Songs of life long past that touch our own are and now to maintain the harmony gives to us all lives worth living. For the oneness of everything. Still we seek to find the truth that we might understand and reduce to terms defined. Vast and immeasurable time and space that lies overwhelmingly designed. All passing years just might I know the faith that winters in the heart to be reborn.
Hi. I think, Kevin, are you at the end? Ah, right. Thank you, Kevin.
You should be muted.
Okay, so right now we want everyone to share their joys and sorrows. If they wish to, you can put it in the chat, and or you can just we will just unmute you. Let me see. I'm going to unmute everybody. Ask all to unmute so you can. Sarah has. Let's hear Sarah.
I just wanted to say that I was supposed to announce that hymn, the offertory hymn, and that was Kevin Clark, obviously singing the oneness of everything, and Carolyn Clark on the piano. So apologies for missing my cue.
No problem. So I would like to just welcome everybody to share their joys and sorrows in the chat, or if you will raise your hand. I see John. Okay, John.
Rona's home.
That's a great joy.
Say hi, Rona.
Hi.
That's wonderful.
Where were you, Rona?
I was in Florida for the last 3 months. I went to Florida to vote.
All right. I'm looking for other hands. Am I missing anybody? Diane. Okay. Diane, unmute yourself.
Hi, this is a little silly and materialistic, but kind of a big deal for me. I just leased my first car yesterday, and I know like we have a car, but it's got like 300,000 miles on it, and it breaks down everywhere, and it can't go in reverse really. So it was kind of dangerous to drive, and now I have a car that's like not as dangerous to drive, and I'm very grateful for that.
That's wonderful. I think I see Maureen. Maureen, go ahead.
I had a fabulous joy last night, thanks to Carolyn and Kevin, and it sort of goes with the talk, which is that my right brain was very stimulated by singing along with some carols on Zoom. And I usually don't enjoy Zoom, but it was very nice. You kind of were muted so you could sing to your heart's content. And it was just such a lovely experience. And I believe they're doing it again next Saturday. And I would highly recommend it. It lifted up my spirit so much and made me feel so much more excited about the holidays. And it just was so joyful. So thank you to Carolyn and Kevin for all they do in terms of music. And thank you to my right brain for having a good time.
Go right brain. in my,
Okay, let me just reiterate that this Saturday at 7 o'clock, we're having another Christmas carol sing, and Carolyn will be distributing the link on Zoom, going out to the church directory on email. She'll send out an email to announce the link. So everyone is welcome Saturday at 7 p.m. And we will have a few Hanukkah songs included, so everyone is welcome.
great. All right, so who else? Anyone else want to say a joy or a sorrow? I have a joy and a sorrow. On Friday, a few of us went to the church, and our joy was to put up garlands on the fence with ribbons. The garland, the brush was donated by Girardi's on Richmond Terrace. They were very nice, and they didn't have a lot of brush because apparently the trees are going like crazy, and they're using all the brush for other things, but they saved some for us, which was really nice. And my sorrow was that somebody or somebody's left boxes and bags of books on the porch. And in those boxes and bags were a lot of children's books. And we can't keep them on the porch. So I had to bag them and put them in the back with the trash. So I felt really bad, and I'm wondering if anybody has a place to take children's books. It'll probably be there for a little while, and you could get them from the trash. So that's my joy and sorrow. Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, if you're all right with me donating them, I can donate them to Salvation Army. They'll certainly take all of them. Obviously, someone will have to buy them then, but that's one place they can go if we don't come up with a better idea. We might try to give them to UAME, the Stapleton UAME too. We donate food to them. They might take our books if they're in good condition.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Okay, I will get them to UAME.
Thank you, Sarah.
I have a joy. My joy is it's like nearly 60 degrees and sunny outside, and I got out this morning, and I recommend that all of you do the same. It's beautiful.
Thank you, David.
We intend to.
All right. Any
Are we ready to move forward?
Okay. All right, Sarah. It's you. I turn it over to you.
Very good. I just need to announce the closing hymn, which is With Heart and Mind.
With heart and mind and voice and hand, may we this time and place transcend, to make our purpose understood. A mortal search for mortal good, a firm commitment to the goal of justice, freedom, peace for all. A mind that's free to seek the truth, a mind that's free in age and youth, to choose a path no thread impedes, wherever light of conscience leads. Our mortals lives only could be a church where every mind is free. A heart that's kind, a heart who search, makes love the spirit of our church, where we can grow and each one's gift is sanctified and spirit swift. where every door is open wide for all who choose to step inside.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, or the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. With these we carry into our hearts together again. I'll now do the closing words and then we can open up for discussion. The closing words are "Love is Our Spirit" by Eric Williams. Love is the spirit of this church. May the songs we sing celebrate this love. May the lives we lead embody this spirit. May you all go forth in peace.